Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday, and this is Seattle Now. The response to solving homelessness in our region has been fractured for a very long time. So about a year ago, King County and Seattle started work on a regional collective authority to make decisions and be more effective. That was before COVID upended everything. In a minute, Seattle Times reporter Scott Greenstone will tell us what's happened since. But first, let's get you caught up. Governor Inslee has outlined his plan for reopening, but he isn't giving the green light just yet. It'll take declining cases, hospital admissions, and ICU occupancy, and a positive test rate of less than 10% to start to open back up. The new plan is simpler than the old one, just 2 steps, with the state divided up into 8 regions. That means things will have to start looking up across all of King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties for Seattle to start reopening. Washington's Republican Congress members are split heading into today's joint session to count electoral votes. Central Washington Representative Dan Newhouse and Jamie Herrera Butler of Vancouver have already said they won't join in the objections. But Spokane's Kathy McMorris Rogers will be one of the more than 100 House Republicans seeking a last-ditch reversal. Either way, the show of support for President Trump's unproven claims of fraud won't change the outcome of the November election. And rain should be easing up today, but the soaking means landslides are a serious risk. Several slides have been reported across western Washington. According to the National Weather Service, sounder service north of Seattle is canceled until at least tomorrow.
Welcome to the offices of the new King County Regional Homelessness Authority. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine. Welcome to the Yesler Building.
A little over a year ago, Seattle and King County took a big step toward addressing homelessness in the region.
We're fixing our fragmented response system so that we can make best use of our resources to make a difference in people's lives.
The city and county partnered up to streamline the patchwork of services to better serve people in need.
This is a historic start in a new era. We have not told people that we will solve homelessness overnight, but we know we have to do better. We must do better, and we will not do better if we don't take the step we're doing today.
This was, of course, before the pandemic, and a lot has changed since then. Scott Greenstone reports on homelessness for the Seattle Times. He's here to catch us up. Hey, Scott.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So about a year ago, when this was planned out, on paper it looked like a comprehensive approach to the problem with stakeholders, cities, and the county working in tandem. What was the goal, and where are we?
Yeah, the goal was you've got 39 cities in King County and the county government, and there's all of these different departments working toward ending homelessness, funding different shelters and different types of homelessness interventions. And the idea was, wait a second, this is so confusing and no one actually has final say over all of it. Let's just get rid of the city of Seattle's homelessness department. Let's get rid of King County's homelessness department, and let's consolidate them in any other sort of large cities that have. Most other cities don't have personnel related to homelessness, but the idea is let's consolidate all these efforts and put them under one person who's in charge of all the contracts, and who can basically say, look, we're going to take this money, we're going to bring it out of, say, shelters. We don't want to spend as much money on shelters because shelters don't work. We're going to put it into housing programs, rent vouchers, something like that. You know, that wasn't necessarily what everyone agreed was going to happen, but it would be someone like that would be over this regional homelessness authority. Kind of like Sound Transit has a CEO, the regional homelessness authority would have a CEO, and that person would have close to final say over a lot of how these strategies are implemented.
So it sounds like the plan was to take a lot of disparate approaches, put it under one umbrella, make it comprehensive, and do some good things.
Absolutely.
This did not go as planned. What did we learn about our approach under the Regional Homeless Authority?
Well, I think the first thing to point out is, of course, did anything go as planned, this year?
In 2020.
I interviewed one of the key architects of this program, and they said, we all had plans for 2020. Let's cut ourselves an ounce of slack here. But first, the Regional Homelessness Authority had to be started in the middle of this pandemic. Their first meeting was in May. It was over Zoom. Some of the folks who help run this authority have been homeless themselves, or at least one of them is actually living in a tiny house village in Georgetown. I spoke to Harold Odom, who is the co-chair of the Regional Homelessness Authority's implementation board. And, he has to attend these public meetings over a Wi-Fi that is shared by everyone else in the tiny house village. He's calling in from his little room. Oftentimes people couldn't hear him. There were all these sort of snafus. He'd never met most of the people he was working with, and that's true for a lot of the other folks. So putting together this authority, the timeline has been completely screwed up by COVID. They were going to hire the CEO in September. They're not now probably going to hire until at least March. And until they hire the CEO, they can't hire the new people to replace the folks at City of Seattle who work on homelessness, at King County who work on homelessness, folks like that. It's been slow going.
I'm really glad you brought up Harold, who was visiting meetings from his tiny house village, because I think it's exemplary of a point that happens often where something seems like it's a good approach, but then you have something as simple as this man can't get access to his Wi-Fi to participate in this meeting, where in this case, he spent the money out of his own pocket to buy a Wi-Fi hotspot to participate in a process.
Absolutely. And he's part of the Regional Homelessness Authority, the push. Every stakeholder needs to be at this table. The suburban cities, the city of Seattle, the county government, and yes, people who've been homeless before. At least that's like one of the guiding principles. And so if you have someone who has been homeless and can offer that insight, and Harold has also got a lot of other experience as well, has worked with providers and things like that. But if you have someone who can't be part of that process, it's kind of gumming up, the whole idea behind, this new effort.
One of the other things I learned from your reporting that's become pretty apparent is that not everyone agrees about how to approach the issue of homelessness. What would you say are the central tensions between the city of Seattle and other more suburban parts of King County who are part of this authority?
Yeah, so this is really, really key when it comes to putting together this authority and who has seats at the table. The city of Seattle, their investment in this whole thing is that they pay for most of the homeless services in the county, but they pay a lot more than even the county pays, the county government pays, but much more than any other city pays for homeless services. And yet they're often serving people who became homeless in cities outside of Seattle. Particularly, I looked at data that said between 15 to 20% people who became homeless in other cities in King County, even especially South King County cities like Auburn. So their investment in this is we need to get these cities to try and pay their fair share, or at least pay some more to take some of the pressure off of us. But the suburban cities are worried that Seattle has put too much money into the problem. They're worried that Seattle has enabled, or that Seattle has paid too much attention to the housing part of the paradigm and not enough attention to mental health and drug treatment. As this year has unfolded, we've lost more than 10% of our mental health beds in King County. Drug treatment providers are really being hurt by the pandemic as well. And so people outside of Seattle are also saying, wait a second, we can't just focus entirely on housing. Where I would say, I think a lot of advocates would respond to that, well, you've got to have housing first before you can do any of those other things.
And of course, all the money in the world, Scott, will not help if the hearts and minds of the people on the Regional Homeless Authority can't come up with a comprehensive plan to use the money effectively. And that has been the story of King County for many years now. We've dumped a lot of money into homelessness and issues surrounding homelessness, with a fairly stable number of people remaining in homelessness over the years.
Well, I would argue we've only seen it grow as we've put more money into it.
What are you watching for as this story develops, Scott?
So the next big hurdle, like I mentioned, is going to be hiring this CEO. The CEO is going to have to be a person who a lot of hopes and dreams ride on this person. In the past, the city has hired homelessness czars, people who were supposedly going to be in charge of fixing homelessness, and they were never given real power or they never used it. So this person will actually have some real power, some real influence. And so, he, she, they will need to be someone that the suburbs like, the city of Seattle likes, the folks who have lived homeless on the governing board like. It's going to have to be a pretty extraordinary person. And this is one reason why we haven't potentially been able to find this person this year is, I again spoke to one of the architects of this authority, and, they said no one qualified was really leaving their jobs in 2020. So hopefully, we get someone who is very qualified, because they're going to need to be. It's a huge job.
Yeah. Scott Greenstone, Seattle Times reporter. Really great to talk to you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Great to talk to you too.
Seattle Now is produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Clare McGrane, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.